welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, joined as always by my good friend Connor Evers. And today we are talking about staying organized both before and during your golf trip across the pond. But Connor, great to be back with you, man. We are T-minus 1 month from the start of the 2025 golf travel season. What's the latest and greatest up at H&B HQ?
DJ, you mentioned that before we got on board, and I couldn't believe it of actually how quickly the travel season is coming to a start here for 2025. We're kind of in three different folds here. We're kind of finishing up some of the planning for kind of late summer, early fall trips for this year for 2025. Getting itineraries and final things and logistics situated for our groups that are about to travel here in 2025. And then, as we all know, kind of planning on 2026, kind of threefold on different things we're working on from the planning perspective, but all good here, Deej, and looking forward to our first groups that are traveling. And actually, it's my first group that leads off the 2025 members that are traveling this year as well. But all good, Deej. What's new in your world?
Yeah, all good here in Orlando. I do feel like we've been kind of the last 2 years of doing this podcast with you, we do hit this deja vu phase about this time of year where we're in this, I don't want to say opposing things, but it's like you've got on the one hand, everybody that's set to travel. And then on the other hand, you've got everyone that is planning for a trip that's over a year in advance. And listen, it's not just Scotland and Ireland and what have you. It's everywhere. I mean, if you've been on social media and so forth, I mean, there's the stories out there, people trying to go to Bandon Dunes and getting shut out because of the new booking system and the whole thing. Golf travel is wild right now. That's all there is to it. And on our typical what I'm reading type segment, I picked up the book 100 Hotels for a Lifetime. I'm a little bit of a hotel nerd. I used to work in the hotel business in another life. And the book was actually put together by a kind of an internet acquaintance, if you will. And so I picked it up and man, what a beautiful book. And on like page 10, there's this awesome full page spread about Adair Manor. It doesn't make the top 100, believe it or not. It gets an honorable mention, but beautiful full page photo of it. The Balmoral, to no surprise, makes the list. The Ritz in Lisbon, which is one that some of our members have been frequenting more lately, is another one on there. But the one that I knew you'd love, Connor, the Pig Hotels, gets a full page insert talking about it, and it goes through each and every location, a little blurb about each. So if you're headed to the Pig down in the Sandwich area, is it the Pig at Bridge Place?
That's correct.
Yeah. Big time favorite of Connor's. I know
it is.
So, but moving back to today's episode, we are talking about staying organized both before and during your golf trip across the pond. And listen, as we've talked so many times in the past, there are a lot of moving parts to these trips. Even when you have a golf travel company that is doing most of the heavy lifting, there's just a lot of stuff to keep track of, deadlines and payments and that sort of thing. And if you're doing it on your own, it's monumentally more complex. It almost becomes a little bit of a part-time job, but there are a lot of folks that absolutely love doing it. And in a way, I'm kind of one of those people as well. I love sitting down and mapping out a trip and putting it together. Connor, I know you're very much the same. So today's episode is going to touch on some tips that will appeal to both groups, whether you're traveling with H&B or another company, or you're traveling on your own and you're putting it together. There's a lot of stuff that will help keep you in the fairway here. But Connor, you run into this way more than I do, and being on the planning side of things. What do you need to be on top of as you get going on a trip?
The topic of this episode kind of came from my current planning, and it's not for a GB&I trip. I'm actually doing a friend's trip to Croatia end of the summer and this fall. And obviously, I'm used to doing GB&I golf trips every single day for our members, and it was very humbling to plan a trip that I did not know where to go. Different expectations for there's going to be about 11 or 12 of us on this trip, and trying to sort it out. And obviously everyone comes to me for the trip planning for this. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty humbling. It's a lot harder than I thought when I do not know all of the area and the knowledge of it. So I think that's kind of how the topic came about. When we were kind of to start planning this as kind of the captain, I think this is kind of what's going to speak volumes to the most about in this episode is there's a lot a lot to keep track of. So again, if it's a trip to GB&I and if there's golf, there's touring, there's all these different things. I mean, you've got, depending on the area that you're going to, I mean, you've got to kind of the initial planning, you got to figure out, when all these golf courses are available and start booking things in. And when you start booking things in, you're going to have tons of different reservations for, like I said, golf, dining, touring, transportation, lodging. And that's just kind of the big bulk items. There's other little increments that add up. And we kind of like to say it, it's the truth. I mean, sometimes you can have 20, 30, 40 different individual reservations, believe it or not, for a week or long trip. So there is a lot to keep track of. And why a lot of people, when they start going on this and say, oh, plan it, I've planned vacations before, they get going, they're like, holy smokes, there is a lot to do here. And in Scotland and Ireland, for example, all these golf courses and hotels, they work completely independent from each other. If you're looking at Bandon Dunes or Streamsong, you just call up and say, I want 4 or 5 nights and book the whole thing. A little bit difficult, more difficult at Bandon Dunes, I may say, but you get my idea and my reference. Everything works a little bit differently. So it's quite confusing. When you're doing this, just a couple things to kind of keep organized is make sure you got some email folders and what have you. You're going to have tons of different reservations, a lot of different moving parts, and keep that email list of saying, hey, this is everything for Marine Troon. This is everything for Royal Dornick, and kind of go from there. And that's what I would do. I would put one folder in and then a subfolder for all these different locations to kind of keep track of everything, from, again, golf, transportation, lodging, and kind of more pre-departure items as well. There's also a lot of little things. Your group and what have you probably is going to expect a packing list, what to wear on the golf course, off the golf course, in the mornings, evenings, what have you. Kind of keep that in mind for a 7-night trip, for example, if you're going over. And then very important is to keep your passport up to date. Both the UK and Ireland, it's at least 6 months beyond your planned departure date from the country of when you want your passport to be updated. So the big change going forward too is the UK ETA, which is the electronic travel authorization. If you're planning a trip with H&B, you'll get some information on this, but there's a lot of info online about this as well. So make sure you have that prior to, and your airline will also inform you about that. Europe is actually scheduled to start their own program, like the ETA, later this year. So just another thing as well, if you're not even just going to GB&I somewhere else outside of those areas. So those are kind of I guess, kind of setup of the episode, but just some things to notice as well.
Yeah, that's all great insight. I mean, having an email folder, with all of your confirms, and by the time the trip rolls around, it's gonna be a mess. And good point as well on the ETA. That is a really big change for this year. It is not a big deal. It's not a difficult thing to do. There's an app. You just download it. You go through the steps. It has you take a picture of yourself and scan your passport. It's really easy, but you got to do it. It's not. This is a new thing, and if you think you can just roll up to customs with your passport this year, you're in for a rude awakening, and or either at customs, or when you go to board your flight and your passport then gets dinged. So go through the ETA. It's pretty easy. We got a video somewhere on our website that walks you through it there as well. But obviously, like you were just saying, communication is a key part of this. I mean, from the planner standpoint, you got to keep all the communication with the golf courses and hotels and everything straight. But then there's the communication amongst the rest of your group. And let's face it, that part can probably be worse than the communication with the golf courses and the hotels, because you got 8 or 10 or 12 different people all pinging you at different times, and stuff gets buried and whatever. So number one is start a group text thread. Put in your notepad app something that is just kind of like the key bullet pointy stuff. Dates, where you're going, hotels, or whatever it might be. That way, you've got a few things. Number one, you've got one place for all of your communication. You're not texting with 8 different people. And I mean, this is pretty basic stuff in 2025, but it needs to be done. Get it off of an email. Email, people don't check their emails. If you're like some people I know, you've got a notification that reads 23,000 on your iPhone. And I don't know how anybody does it, and so get it in your text thread. What you'll also find is that it kind of starts to feed on itself. And what I mean by that is, once you've dropped things in, updates on whatever you might be doing, in a month or two, when that one person chimes in and says, "What are the dates of the trip again?" Somebody else will probably answer before you get there to it. So it relieves some pressure in terms of the communication. You've got you've got other people that are paying attention, keeping the ones who aren't paying attention somewhat in line. But the other is just the general banter. You're leading up to this really exciting trip that you probably are planning in some cases 18 months to 2 years in advance, depending on what you're doing. And all that banter, it just brings the group together. And it's especially helpful if you don't really all know each other all that well. You can get to know each other better or just have a built in relationship before you arrive. Kind of tied to this, under the communication umbrella, I would also say either start an iCloud folder or Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever your file sharing system is for photos in particular. You want to have a place that you can go to that's got all those memories stored in one place. Take pictures of each other. That's a piece of feedback we hear occasionally, that I got pictures of everybody else, but I got none of myself. Take pictures of everybody, put them in there, and that way you can look back on it as well. But again, it just kind of goes back to the communication. You got it all in one place, and that's important.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And I usually have a shared folder with DJ and I whenever I go over individually and share the photos with him for proposals or what have you, that we can add some photos in and for the website too. So that's always fun. And one of our groups, it's a club out of the Massachusetts area, and they do a really good job with their communication. And kind of when we have the trip scheduled in about 6 or 7, 8 months out, that's usually when he starts getting a lot of questions. And we'll actually just do a Zoom call with him and his membership. And that's what we've been doing. The group's actually going on 3 trips next year in 2026. We'll do a few of those and answering those questions like, hey, when should we arrive? When should we depart? And yeah, you may not, if you're listening to this and maybe you're trying to plan this on your own and attempt to, you're going to have a lot of these questions. So just, I would say, maybe schedule a few of those Zoom calls and just get everyone aligned, and make sure everyone's listening to it. Because as you noted, DJ, some people just don't read their emails or don't read the communication. When are we going on the trip? What time do we play? Roll Dornick. I mean, it's like, you're going on the trip, you're paying for it. What the heck? Why don't you know? But it happens every time, and it's something we see almost on the daily. And it's just how humans work. So it's just the way it is. But kind of next thing up, and it's a big one. It's deposits. So as I mentioned and kind of noted prior to, all these courses in GB&I, they all work independently from each other. And when they also work independently from each other, their deposit and their payment structures are also way different. Again, I go back, if you're going to StreamSong, you pay them $1 amount and it takes care of the whole thing, kind of like us as a tour operator. But if you're doing it on your own and you're playing, say, 6 or 7 golf courses, you're staying at 2 or 3 hotels, everyone's going to be a little bit different. And it's a heck of a lot to take in. So I would definitely, if you're group captain, get an Excel document, figure out the total cost at each golf course, figure out the dates of the deposits, and you're also going to have to figure out, hey, has John paid me? Has Sam paid me? Has, all these different people have paid me, and make sure it's all good, because some of these courses, they're going to have a deposit that's going to be due straight up. Sometimes the 100% of the round is going to be due right away. Some you can hold it for a few months and pay later. It's all going to be very different. And that is one thing that I would suggest the most, is just being extremely organized and diligent with, especially if you're quote unquote the banker for taking care of this, or the group captain. You're definitely going to have to be organized and make sure people are paying you. And I think this is one of the biggest things that tour operators, that people just don't appreciate the most, is we take care of all that and take the guesswork out of it, as you're just paying us one fee or a few deposits, what have you. Honestly, again, we do this on the daily. That would be a very stressful job, being a group captain, is taking care of all this and make sure everyone's paying you. So yeah, I mean, again, you could have 15, 20, 25 different deposit amounts that you're paying throughout a whole year for courses. So just something to consider as well. And they can sell very organized for that.
Well, it's not only the stress of keeping it all straight, but it could be a very expensive job for you if you're the captain or the banker, like you just said, and you've made, maybe some mistakes on who's paid what, or where you've paid, deposits or whatever, because every one of those courses and hotels, guess whose credit card they're taking? If you've been haven't done a totally diligent job of keeping track of just all of these different deposits, like you're saying, it's going to end up costing you because your card's going to be the one that gets dinged for the full amount, and whether you're not, you can recoup the full thing from whoever might still owe is a different story. But on top of all of the just the different moving parts, if you're the planner of the group in particular, you want to keep most of this as close to the vest as possible. You don't want to have too many people that are involved. But if you can, delegate some tasks. Get somebody that is in charge of maybe your restaurant reservations, or if you've got one person that is all about like the action on the course, put them in charge of the games you're going to play. But if you do this, hold them accountable, because again, you don't want to then get over there and realize that, oh, the foodie of the group that was really, the restaurants were a really important thing on their, must do list, didn't really come through when it came to the organization of the rest of the reservations. There's plenty of ways to help keep track of all of those. Connor, talk us through some of the tech that that can make this maybe a touch easier.
Yeah, there are certain things. There's an app called TripIt. It's a pretty cool one. You could check out. You can make an account. I don't know what the fee is, but there's a price to it. But you can actually upload all your reservations. Say, June 5th we're playing here, June 6th, June 7th, whatever, and kind of keeps you all organized from the trip. And another one of those apps, I mean, DJ, you were mentioning there to kind of keep everything organized is Splitwise. It's a great app to kind of keep different expenses. So, DJ, if you're paying for dinner one night and I'm paying it for another night, and Mary's paying it for another night, it all kind of comes into one, and you can kind of see what everyone owes, kind of the final balance for the week, which is really nice. I've used it before. One of my good friends who was a group captain on a trip last year actually used it, and it all worked out really well for him. So that was pretty cool. And you'll find, again, and kind of the reason why you do that, a lot of the restaurants overseas, you're not splitting bills up individually. It's one table. So it's just, you're kind of forced to do that and keep track of it. It's just a good way to keep it all organized. And again, one other thing I was even thinking of too, just outside of this, is one of those other things you're going to have to manage is caddy requests. And we have it sometimes. If it's a group of 12 golfers, say, or 8 golfers, someone's going to want caddies for every single, golf course. They're going to want to put a request in. There's going to be some people that may want them for the Royal Dornick and Old Course and not some other courses. People that just want to have a trolley for the whole, rounds. So another thing you're going to have to look into as well when doing this. So I'm not trying to scare people, but it's just the nature of the beast, if you will, of putting this all together and making it all come together for a group of, 8 or what have you. So.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is it's a lot. I mean, like we said, it's a part-time job, and for some people, it's a joy. It's something they thoroughly enjoy doing. They're passionate about it, and I totally get that. And I'm more power to you to go out and do it. Obviously, there is an easier way. It won't be the cheapest way, but if you set aside all of the other benefits of working with a golf travel company, the access and the contacts overseas that are making your trip more enjoyable, the everything about it that gets deposited into your experience that leads to a better experience. I think one of the main things that gets overlooked in terms of the value of what that professional is bringing to the table is simply keeping it all straight for you. I mean, keeping track of 20 and 30 payment reminders and all of that. I mean, it's just asking for stuff to go sideways. And so you're right, it can be a part-time job. But Connor, this was a relatively quick and easy one. Any closing thoughts there before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, this was also very fun and said quick and easy, which has been nice. But I would say it kind of goes back to how I started it off. Again, when I was looking at doing this Croatia trip with some friends, I was probably about a quarter of the way through it, and I realized, oh, I get why people hire people to do this. Like, this is difficult. It's like I said, going back to a place that I don't know, unknown. So I mean, I'm just planning out the small details and not all these deposits and caddy requests and dinners and all that stuff. It is a lot, and that's why you should hire a golf travel agency such as us, Haversham and Baker, to take care of it. So that's all I can add.
Well, even if not, we have always, said that rising tide lifts all boats. Our goal is to make sure that everyone has a great and better trip, because you're going to come back and you're going to tell 10 friends about it. And so if we help to that point, that's the goal here. We have a lot of other resources on our website in the yardage book section that deals with specific things, flight tips, and all these sort of things to keep track. But we will, as usual, link to all of those things in the show notes. If you got any questions, send us a DM on social media or send us an email, golf@haversham.com. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We will be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.